Before you go searching for who he is, before you spend time analyzing, questioning, or judging what he brings to the table, you must first look into the mirror and confront the most important question of your life. Who are you? This is where everything begins. Too many people rush into relationships, rush into partnerships, rush into commitments, yet they have never done the work of understanding themselves. They don't know their values, they don't know their strengths, they don't know their weaknesses, and they don't know their worth. How can you measure another person's character if you haven't even measured your own? How can you ask for loyalty, for respect, for admiration if you haven't first built a foundation of those qualities within yourself? Knowing who you are is not about ego, and it's not about showing off. It's about clarity. It's about defining the standard of how you expect to be treated. When you know yourself, you don't get shaken by small things, you don't chase validation, you don't fall for empty words or temporary promises. Instead, you stand rooted like a mountain, unshakable because you know the ground you are standing on. That kind of self-awareness is what separates a person who is easily swayed by charm from a person who demands respect without ever needing to ask for it. Too often, people go into situations hoping that someone else will define them, complete them, or give them value. They think, if I find the right person, I'll finally feel whole. But the truth is, if you are not whole on your own, you will always be searching for something outside of yourself. When you don't know who you are, you cling to others for identity. You start compromising your dignity, your dreams, your potential, just to hold on to someone who might not even deserve your time. This is why self-knowledge is power. It prevents you from settling. It prevents you from accepting less than you deserve. It prevents you from giving the crown away before you've even worn it yourself. Knowing yourself means setting standards that are non-negotiable. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What do you refuse to accept? If you don't answer these questions, then someone else will answer them for you. And let me tell you, when someone else defines your worth, it will always be lower than what you're truly capable of. You can't expect him to honor you if you don't even honor yourself. You can't expect him to commit if you don't even know what commitment means to you. You can't expect him to be strong if you haven't cultivated strength inside your own spirit. When you walk in silence, when you put in the work, when you discipline yourself to rise above mediocrity, you start building a sense of identity that no one can take away. You begin to radiate confidence, not the fake kind that comes from pretending, but the real kind that comes from mastery. And here's the truth, men, the world, and everyone around you will recognize that energy instantly. Respect doesn't come from demanding attention. It comes from commanding presence. And presence is born from identity. Knowing who you are also saves you from confusion. Think about how much time is wasted in relationships where one person doesn't even know what they want. They jump from one idea to another, one expectation to another, hoping the other person will magically align with a standard they never clearly set. That's not strength, that's chaos. But when you know who you are, you bring order into every situation. You walk in with certainty. You walk in with vision. You don't have to argue about what you deserve because your life already reflects it. Understanding yourself also means embracing the dark corners within you, the weaknesses, the flaws, the mistakes. Too many people hide from that. They want to project perfection, but inside they are running from the truth. Self-knowledge is not about pretending you have it all figured out. It's about honesty. It's about saying, yes, I have weaknesses, but I'm working on them. Yes, I've failed, but I've learned. Yes, I've fallen, but I refuse to stay down. That kind of authenticity makes you powerful because it means you are not afraid of being real. When you know who you are, you stop chasing validation from men. You stop begging for love, for attention, for recognition. You start attracting it naturally because people are drawn to certainty. They are drawn to someone who doesn't need them but chooses them. And that choice is powerful because it's not born from desperation, it's born from strength. Imagine the difference between a woman who clings to a man because she doesn't know her worth and a woman who already knows her worth and allows a man to add to it. The first one is dependent, the second one is a queen. Identity is not a label. It's not your job. It's not the clothes you wear. It's not the titles you carry. Identity is your values, your discipline, your vision, your inner strength. It's who you are when no one is watching. It's the fire that keeps burning even when the world doubts you. And until you know that, until you own that, you will always be searching outside yourself for answers that can only be found within before you begin examining him, questioning his loyalty, measuring his vision, or analyzing his worth. The first task is to master the understanding of yourself. Because if you don't know who you are, how will you know what kind of man truly aligns with your destiny? Too many people rush into relationships without clarity, and they end up drowning in confusion. They chase after someone else's approval. They get caught up in the illusion of love, and they forget that the foundation of respect begins with self-awareness. Knowing who you are means you have already defined the standards. It means you understand your purpose, your boundaries, your value, and your direction. Without that, you risk being carried away by sweet words, empty promises, or superficial attraction. When you know who you are, you won't be blinded by appearances. You won't get impressed by surface-level charm or temporary attention. Instead, you will evaluate a man through the lens of your vision, your principles, and your goals. You will know whether he aligns with the path you are walking or whether he is simply a distraction dressed as an opportunity. This is why self-knowledge is a shield. It protects you from wasting time, from giving your energy to the wrong people, from investing in relationships that do not honor who you truly are. Without that shield, you can end up being molded by someone else's identity instead of building your own. Think about this: how many people go searching for a partner, expecting him to bring qualities they themselves haven't developed. They want loyalty, but they haven't mastered loyalty to themselves. They want vision, but they don't even know their own direction. They want respect, but they tolerate disrespect in their own lives. You cannot demand from another what you haven't demanded from yourself. If you want a man of discipline, you must walk in discipline. If you want a man of strength, you must first embrace strength within yourself. If you want a man of vision, you must already be moving toward your own vision. Otherwise, you're asking someone else to build your foundation, and that is not his job. It is yours. Knowing who you are doesn't just give you clarity, it gives you power. Because when you are rooted in your identity, you are not desperate, you are not needy, you are not begging for someone to complete you. You are already complete. And any man who steps into your life is not filling a void. He is adding to the empire you've already built. That difference changes everything. A woman who doesn't know herself will bend, compromise, and settle just to keep a man. But a woman who knows herself will not hesitate to walk away from anything that doesn't align with her worth. That is the kind of presence that commands respect without ever having to demand it. This is also the reason why many women end up disappointed. They put so much energy into trying to figure out who he is before taking the time to figure out who they are. They ask, is he loyal? Is he trustworthy? Is he strong? Is he ambitious? But they never stop to ask, am I loyal to my vision? Am I trustworthy with my own promises? Am I strong enough to stand alone? Am I ambitious enough to chase my destiny? If the answer is no, then the search is backwards. Because no matter how great a man might be, if you don't know yourself, you won't even know how to value him. Worse, you won't know how to set the standards that will allow him to treat you the way you deserve to be treated. Knowing yourself also means having emotional clarity. It means understanding why you make the choices you make, why you react the way you do, why you desire the things you desire. Too often, people get caught up in emotional cycles without ever asking, why am I attracted to this type of person? Why do I allow this kind of behavior? Why do I repeat the same mistakes? When you know yourself, you break those cycles. You start making conscious choices instead of being driven by impulse. That's what separates someone who gets trapped in endless heartbreak from someone who walks with wisdom and discernment. And let's be clear, knowing who you are is not about being perfect. It's about being aware. It's about owning your strengths and your weaknesses, and being honest about where you are. It's about refusing to hide from your flaws, but also refusing to let them define you. It's about looking in the mirror and saying, this is me. This is my standard. This is my path. And anyone who steps into my life must either rise to meet it or step aside. That kind of certainty is magnetic. It doesn't chase respect, it attracts it. It doesn't demand loyalty, it inspires it. It doesn't ask for love, it earns it naturally. So before you ask who he is, ask who you are. Before you measure his vision, measure your own. Before you look at his strength, look at the strength within yourself. Before you ask what he brings to the table, ask what kind of table you have already built. Because when you know who you are, you won't be tricked by appearances, you won't be swayed by empty promises, and you won't waste your energy on men who don't align with your destiny. You will already be walking as a queen, and a queen never lowers her crown just to be accepted. She stands tall and lets the world rise to her standard. Before you demand to know who he is, what he stands for, or what he can give, you must be grounded in the unshakable truth of who you are. Identity is not just a word, it is the foundation upon which every choice, every relationship, and every level of respect you receive will be built. Too many people make the mistake of seeking identity in another person. They let the presence of a man define them, validate them, or give them worth. But when you rely on someone else to tell you who you are, you place your power in their hands. And the moment they walk away, your sense of self collapses with them. That is why you must first establish yourself firmly so no one can take away what they never gave. Knowing who you are gives you clarity in relationships. It allows you to see beyond charm, beyond appearance, beyond promises. Because a man can say all the right things, he can display strength, he can present ambition, but if you don't know yourself, you won't know how to separate real alignment from empty attraction. When you are rooted in your own values, your own standards, and your own direction, you will recognize whether someone truly belongs in your journey. You will know whether he is adding to your vision or pulling you away from it. Without self-awareness, you can be fooled by surface-level qualities, but with it, you see clearly through the noise. Ask yourself, what do I want in life? What do I stand for? What is my purpose? If you cannot answer these questions, then you are not yet ready to evaluate someone else, because without direction, you will cling to any direction he offers, and without standards, you will accept whatever treatment he gives. This is why knowing who you are is not just an option, it is a necessity. It protects you from lowering your standards out of fear of being alone. It protects you from chasing validation instead of demanding respect. It protects you from falling into relationships where you compromise your crown just to feel temporary comfort. When you know who you are, you stop begging for attention. You no longer need someone else to validate your beauty, your intelligence, your strength, or your worth. You already know it. And because you know it, you move differently. You walk with confidence, you speak with authority, you carry yourself with grace. This does not mean arrogance, it means certainty. And certainty is what commands respect. A man respects a woman who knows herself because she cannot be swayed by shallow gestures. She cannot be controlled by manipulation. She cannot be bought with temporary affection. She is not impressed by words alone. She demands proof, consistency, and alignment. This kind of self-knowledge also saves you from losing yourself in a relationship. Too many women abandon their dreams, their ambitions, and their identity the moment a man enters their life. They pour everything into building him up while forgetting who they are. And later, when the relationship crumbles, they are left empty, not because they weren't valuable, but because they gave away all of themselves without first establishing their own foundation. When you know who you are, you never lose yourself in another person because you already know that your worth is independent of them. You can love deeply, but you don't lose your crown in the process. Another truth is that when you don't know yourself, you attract men who take advantage of that void. They see uncertainty and they exploit it. They see insecurity and they manipulate it. But when you know yourself, those same men cannot even approach you because your energy rejects them. You are no longer accessible to mediocrity. You no longer tolerate disrespect. You no longer compromise your dignity. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to fight for respect because your presence already makes it clear what you will and will not accept. Understanding yourself also means understanding your flaws. It means you are not hiding behind perfection, but instead you are working on yourself every single day. You acknowledge your weaknesses, but you don't let them define you. You acknowledge your past mistakes, but you don't let them hold you hostage. You own every part of your story because you know it shaped the queen you are becoming. That kind of honesty with yourself makes you untouchable. A man cannot use your past against you when you've already accepted it. He cannot shake your confidence when it is built on truth instead of illusion. Knowing who you are allows you to build standards that cannot be compromised. You don't lower them just to keep someone. You don't adjust them just to avoid being alone. You understand that being alone with clarity is far better than being with someone in confusion. And when you hold firm to those standards, you attract the right kind of man, the one who respects your identity instead of trying to replace it, the one who adds to your strength instead of taking from it, the one who sees your crown and never asks you to remove it. Before asking who he is, you must ask yourself, who am I? What do I believe in? What do I want my future to look like? What am I unwilling to compromise? Because when you know these answers, you will not waste time. You will not fall for anyone who doesn't align with your vision. You will not invest in someone who doesn't deserve your energy. You will already be walking in your purpose, and anyone who joins you must match that purpose or step aside. Before you spend time evaluating him, his character, his vision, his discipline, his potential, you must first take the deep and sometimes uncomfortable journey of truly knowing yourself. Because if you do not understand your own worth, your own values, your own boundaries, then you will always be tempted to settle for less than what you deserve. You will always be tempted to accept treatment beneath your standard. And the truth is, no matter how much you demand respect, no matter how much you hope for loyalty, people will only treat you at the level you treat yourself. Knowing who you are is what sets the tone for how others approach you. It's what teaches the world what is and is not acceptable. Without that self-awareness, you become vulnerable to manipulation, to inconsistency, to relationships where you lose more than you gain. The mistake many people make is believing that finding the right man will somehow fill the emptiness inside. They think his presence will give them confidence, his attention will give them value, his love will give them identity. But here is the hard truth: if you do not know yourself, no man can complete you. He can distract you for a season, but he cannot build the foundation of your self-worth. That is your responsibility. You must step into the mirror and ask the questions that most people run away from. Who am I? What do I stand for? What do I refuse to compromise on? What is my vision? What is my mission? Until you can answer these questions with certainty, you will continue to measure men against standards you yourself have not yet defined. When you know who you are, you approach relationships differently. You are not desperate, you are discerning. You are not begging to be chosen, you are choosing. You are not impressed by empty promises or shallow gestures because you have already set a standard that requires consistency, strength, and vision. That kind of clarity is magnetic because it communicates without words that you are not available for games. You are not available for half effort. You are not available for anyone who does not respect your value, and that energy alone forces others to rise to your level or step aside. Knowing yourself also means embracing your individuality. You are not in competition with other women. You are not in a race to prove your worth. You are not defined by comparisons. You are unique, and your identity does not depend on anyone else's approval. Too often, people lose themselves because they are busy trying to mold their identity into what they think will impress someone else. They sacrifice their dreams, silence their voice, and weaken their strength just to keep a man close. But when you know who you are, you will never trade your crown for temporary company. You will never shrink yourself just to make someone else comfortable. You will never compromise your future just to avoid being alone in the present. Self-awareness is also the greatest filter you will ever have. It protects you from investing in relationships that drain you. It helps you identify red flags early because you are not blinded by emotion or fantasy. When you know who you are, you can see through charm, you can see through empty words, you can see through the illusion of effort. You are able to step back and ask, does this person align with my values? Does he strengthen my vision or distract me from it? Does he respect my boundaries or test them? And if the answer is no, you will have the strength to walk away because your identity is not tied to his presence. Another truth about knowing yourself is that it frees you from the trap of needing validation. When you know yourself, you don't need constant reassurance. You don't need someone to tell you that you're beautiful, worthy, or capable, because you already know it deep within. And because you know it, you don't accept anything less than behavior that reflects it. A man who does not respect you will never survive in the presence of a woman who respects herself, because she will not tolerate his inconsistency. She will not beg for his effort. She will not fight for his attention. She will simply walk away because her worth is not up for negotiation. Knowing who you are also prepares you for partnership. Too many people believe love means losing themselves in another person, but real love is when two whole individuals come together to build something greater. If you do not know yourself, you will get lost in him. You will live through his dreams, his identity, his choices, and forget your own. But when you know yourself, you bring strength into the relationship. You bring clarity. You bring purpose. And a man will respect that because he will see that you are not leaning on him to define you, but instead standing beside him as a partner who already knows her worth. This journey of self-awareness is not easy, but it is necessary. It requires you to be honest about your weaknesses, to confront your insecurities, to heal from your past. It demands that you stop running from the truth and start owning it. But once you do, you become unshakable. You become untouchable. You become the kind of woman who commands respect by the way she walks into a room, by the way she carries herself, by the way she never lowers her standard just to be accepted. And when you know who you are, you won't waste time asking the wrong questions about him, because you will already know that the only men who belong in your life are the ones who can stand beside a queen without ever asking her to lower her crown. Before you place your focus on who he is, what he does, how he moves, and what he can offer, you must first secure the most important truth in your life, the definition of who you are. Because if you are unclear about yourself, you will always be unclear about him. You cannot measure another person's strength if you have not yet defined your own. You cannot determine whether he aligns with your standards if you do not know what your standards are. Too many people make the mistake of prioritizing discovery of the other person before discovery of themselves. And this is why so many end up lost in relationships that don't reflect their worth. Knowing who you are means you have already established your identity. And identity is the foundation of respect. If you do not know your worth, you will accept treatment beneath it. If you do not know your vision, you will follow someone else's path, even if it leads you nowhere. If you do not know your values, you will compromise them the moment someone applies pressure. This is why self-awareness is not optional. It is vital. Without it, you are like a ship without a compass, drifting wherever the waves of attention carry you. But when you know yourself, you move with direction, you have clarity, and you have boundaries. And those boundaries create the framework of how every man must treat you. Too often, women pour all their energy into dissecting a man. They want to know his intentions, his loyalty, his dreams, his flaws. They ask, is he worthy? Is he strong? Is he consistent? But they never pause long enough to ask, am I worthy of the standards I demand? Am I strong enough to walk alone if he doesn't measure up? Am I consistent with my own values? Am I clear about what I deserve? Because if you don't know yourself, even the right man can become the wrong one for you. Not because of who he is, but because you didn't know how to handle him. When you know who you are, you no longer seek completion from someone else. You already stand complete. You don't lean on him to validate your beauty, your worth, or your intelligence. You don't rely on him to make you feel powerful. You already know it within yourself. And when you carry that certainty, it changes everything. You walk differently. You talk differently. You carry yourself with authority, not arrogance, but an authority that says, I know what I bring, and I will not accept less than I deserve. That energy cannot be ignored. It forces a man to rise to the level of your standard or move out of the way. Knowing yourself also prevents you from losing yourself in a relationship. Too many women sacrifice their identity the moment they step into love. They let go of their dreams, their independence, their discipline just to hold on to a man. But here's the truth: when you abandon yourself for someone else, you will always end up empty. Love should never cost you your identity, and if it does, it isn't love, it's dependency. A woman who knows herself will never fall into that trap, because she understands that her crown is not negotiable. She does not hand it over for temporary affection. She does not remove it to make someone else feel more comfortable. She wears it boldly, and only the man who respects it can walk beside her. When you know who you are, you attract differently. You no longer entertain mediocrity. You no longer tolerate disrespect. You no longer waste time with people who are not aligned with your future. Your self-awareness acts as a filter, removing anyone who cannot meet your standard. It saves you from unnecessary heartbreak because you are not fooled by charm or distracted by surface-level attraction. You see beyond the exterior, beyond the temporary, into the deeper alignment of values, vision, and character. And if a man does not align, you do not cling, you do not beg, you do not compromise. You simply move on because you already know your worth. This kind of clarity is rare, and that is why it is powerful. The majority of people walk through life unsure of themselves, and because of that, they chase people who cannot give them what they seek. But when you are sure of yourself, you don't chase, you attract. You don't settle, you select. You don't wait for someone else to define your value. You live it every day. And because of that, when the right man enters your life, he will recognize your power immediately. He will see that you are not asking for permission to be a queen. You are already walking as one. His role will not be to define you, but to align with you. Self-knowledge is the ultimate foundation of respect. It is the reason men will treat you the way you deserve. They can sense when a woman knows her worth because she carries herself differently. She doesn't argue about her standards, she embodies them. She doesn't demand respect with words, she commands it with presence. She doesn't beg for loyalty, she inspires it by being loyal to her own values first. This is what it means to truly know yourself before asking who he is, because once you are rooted in your identity, the answer to who he is becomes clear. Either he is worthy of walking beside you or he is not, but either way, you never lose yourself in the process.